Okay, let's address possibly the biggest news, immigration news of last week, which is this new updated USCIS guidance regarding family-based immigration, and its new policies. And there is a lot of concern from individuals who have read this guidance that USCIS is going to start issuing notices to appear for anyone who has filed for an I-130, because that's what it says in the updated guidance. And frankly, we don't know what's going to happen, but I can tell you a little bit of information that we already had about I-130s, family-based immigration, and how I think this might play out. First, what they've done is a violation of the Administrative Procedures Act, okay, the APA. There's no comment period. And so I expect there to be a lawsuit filed pretty quickly to pause the implementation of this new guidance, okay? That's number one. Second, nothing that was published is actually new. It might have been stated in a new way, but they have always been able to issue notices to appear for people who were in the country, unlawfully. So if you filed an I-130 and you were doing it based on a marriage to a U.S. citizen and you are no longer in status, USCIS has always been able to issue a notice to appear. So this isn't new policy. I think they're highlighting it in a way to instill fear. And I also think that, sure, there might be an increase in notices to appear. Notices to appear are notices that you're going to be placed in deportation proceedings, okay? I want to talk about who I think is most at risk, okay? One, I think people who filed I-130s, who also sought asylum. So if you filed for asylum and then it's not adjudicated, it's still pending, and then you filed a subsequent I-130, USCIS might be vetting cases to see if there was asylum fraud or family-based immigration fraud, saying, hey, you've already filed for asylum, it's been pending, or you were not successful, and this is like a convenient marriage. So we're going to screen for that and issue a notice to appear, place you in removal proceedings. Also, people with TPS that was expired, that were kind of left out in the dark, they have no other status. They had protected status, no longer do, and subsequently filed for an I-130. Additionally, I do think that there's going to be a target of a certain demographic of people. It hasn't been published anywhere, but what we do know is an individual from Tunisia who entered with a B2 visa and was in the process of adjusting his status, was in fact detained. He had an I-130 pending, an I-485 pending, and was detained, I believe, outside of the university perhaps that he taught at, and placed in removal proceedings. He was married to a U.S. citizen. I don't think it is a coincidence that he is from Tunisia. In other words, I think a lot of the individuals who were on the travel ban, those countries who are majority Muslim countries, it's not published anywhere, but my hypothesis is that we are going to see this perhaps play out for individuals more from those countries. Again, we don't know, but I will say that this has always been the policy to issue NTAs to anyone. They've been able to issue NTAs to anyone in the U.S. without status. During Trump 1.0, this was the case also. We continued to file I-130s. Then what we had to do is if we had an I-601A pending, we asked for admin closure or termination of the case so that USCIS could continue to adjudicate it. I think the biggest difference between Trump 1.0 and now is this new ICE policy of mandatory detention for everyone who entered without inspection. So even though we might be able to terminate if somebody is detained while they're in removal proceedings, that is certainly an unpleasant experience to say the least. That being said, the ACLU has filed a lawsuit regarding the mandatory detention, and I do hope there is that is overruled in the coming weeks.